Hey guys, it's the Metal 5, and I've been keeping up with all the news at E3 in the past week, like I do every year, but I thought I should make a video of my impressions of some of the games shown, as a few people have wanted me to do it. Now, last year, I was planning on making a video about E3 then, but the only thing I could talk about that year would have been Nintendo's digital event, which, you know.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So for this video, I'll be only talking about the games that appeared at E3 that I have seen and relate to me, because if we talked about every single game at E3, we would be here forever, and for pretty much most of them, we were like, no interest in it, or never played a game for this franchise before. So first, we have probably the biggest game shown this year, which also won the game of the show, which is, of course, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now quickly, let's sort of talk about something I thought of when the trailer was revealed, which is to do with the title. Now, don't take this the wrong way, because the title does fit the game's atmosphere, but I find Breath of the Wild to be a bit of an odd subtitle. As soon as the title was shown at the end of the trailer, I immediately thought that it sounded like a nature documentary or something. Hello, and welcome to the Breath of the Wild with I, Sir David Attenborough. As for the game itself, it looks amazing. The world is breathtaking, and it is absolutely gigantic. Nintendo said that the map in the demo was only 2% of the entire game, and it was massive. Some parts of the trailer actually made me kind of think of Skyrim a bit in a way, especially when Link was fighting some large enemy in the mountains. Plus, the new Sheikah Slate, which is basically an iPad on steroids, looks really interesting as it provides a variety of functions, including a magnet mode in which Link can become Magneto. Also, you can copy Legolas and use your shield as a sled. That is awesome. As for plot, that is still a large mystery. Link wakes up in this weird pod that made me think of Alien for some reason and enters Hyrule. All we really know about the plot is that Hyrule has fallen into despair and that Ganon is confirmed to be the villain. Now, what's really intriguing is that Nintendo said that you can actually fight the final boss as soon as you start the game, meaning that it's up to the player if they want to know what's going on. My only concern for this game is that I am worried that these new shrine areas that they showed off are going to replace typical dungeons, since I would still like to go to dungeons as a way of story progression. One other point of interest is that the trailer opens up with a voice that tells Link to open his eyes and wake up, which could suggest that this game may have voice acting. A lot of people have wanted Zelda games with voice acting for a while, but for me, I've never been bothered if a Zelda game has voice acting or not, as long as they focus on what actually matters to me. The only game in which a lack of voice acting bothered me was Hyrule Warriors, since there was a narrator that actually spoke in that game, along with more cinematic-looking cutscenes. Since I'm British and not the richest guy in the world, I wasn't able to go to E3 and play the games, but I am really looking forward to Breath of the Wild when it comes out next year. Moving on from there, we have the other big game that Nintendo focused on, which was Pokemon Sun and Moon, in which gameplay was shown along with 3 new Pokemon. In terms of the gameplay, everything seems fine, as it's the typical Pokemon formula. However, there was one thing that pissed me off, which is that the game outright tells you what moves are super effective and not effective against your opponent. A lot of fans complain about how modern Pokemon games are becoming easier, and I've tolerated most of these changes. However, I think this is making the game way too fucking easy. Part of the fun I have when playing the new Pokemon generation, I should say, is trying to find out what moves are effective against which Pokemon and remembering each type's weaknesses, not having the game frickin' tell me everything. I hope there is an option to turn it off, because that is holding your hand way too much. It's like a damn Phoenix mode in Fire Emblem Fates. The other important note for gameplay is the introduction of a Battle Royale mode, which is a really cool idea. Although, I don't get how it works exactly, considering in the live stream, the match ended as soon as one Pokemon fainted. And I thought that was only going to be till one Pokemon was left. I don't know, maybe that was just for, like, the demo at E3, I don't know. The only thing that bothers me about this is that it gives me flashbacks of a certain YouTuber that I've talked about before on this channel. Getting to the new Pokemon, we have Pikipek, Yungoos, and Grubbin, which are all of the early game Pokemon. So far, I like Pick-a-Peck for its design and being a woodpecker Pokemon, and I also like Yungoos for its goofy mouth and accuracy to a real-life mongoose. As for Grubbin, I'm not a fan. I'm just not that big on its design and name, although it could potentially be Joltik for the smallest Pokemon. It's fucking tiny. We also got news on Magearna being the reveal of its type being Steel and Fairy, which was kind of predictable, but also its signature move, Fleur Cannon? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And its ability, Soul Heart, which both seem very interesting, although the Soul Heart ability seems very situational. The other Pokemon thing we got was a showcase of Pokemon Go. Personally, Pokemon Go doesn't interest me since I'm not a mobile gamer, but I like the idea of it, and it is stated that there will be features added to the game later, like trading. However, even then, the gameplay, to me, doesn't seem that interesting, personally. That's just my opinion. But obviously, Nintendo were not the only company with big announcements this year. The other conferences had some awesome reveals as well. Starting with Sony, the big surprise for me at this year's E3 was the announcement of a Spider-Man game for the PS4 developed by Insomniac. This gets me excited because, while I have said a couple of times on this channel that Batman is my favorite superhero, Spider-Man is a very close second, and I hope this game does the wall crawler justice. I don't think I've played a Spider-Man game before, but based off of the trailer, it should look really promising. I hope that the game will include a lot of iconic Spider-Man villains, like Batman villains in the Arkham games, since Spider-Man has tons of great villains, and shockingly not a single villain appeared in the trailer, unless I missed something. I don't know why. Maybe they could even incorporate the Sinister Six in some way to the plot. With Insomniac having a good track record of games, as they make Ratchet & Clank, I have a lot of confidence in this game, although I'll still have to wait to see future news about it. On the subject of superhero games, this takes us to one of the biggest and most exciting announcements for me at E3, being Injustice 2. I've never said this before, but I am a big fan of the first Injustice, and I've really wanted a sequel for some time now. For Injustice 2, coincidentally, 2 trailers were released. A CG trailer and a gameplay trailer. For the CG trailer, it was revealed that a new major mechanic in the game is this new gear system, in which you can equip each character with unlockable clothing that changes their stats. I like the idea of this, especially since it makes online matches more interesting, as each opponent is unique, as Ed Boon has constantly repeated in interviews. But one concern I do have for this mechanic is that I am a bit worried that the gear may make some characters overpowered, depending on what gear you use. From the gameplay I've seen of the demo, none of the gear appear to have any downsides to the characters, unlike the custom items from Smash Bros. I also hope that the gear system doesn't replace alternate costumes for characters, as in the first Injustice, I liked how a lot of the costumes reference storylines from the comics, like The Killing Joke. In the gameplay trailer, the big thing showing was the gameplay reveal of 3 new playable characters, being Supergirl, Atrocitus, and Gorilla Grodd, who all look really cool to play as in their own ways. I've especially gravitated towards Atrocitus, even though I know nothing about him other than that he's the leader of the Red Lanterns. Although, I love how they gave him Dex-Star. This is so random and funny, but I love it. Plus, we also got to see all of the characters in the demo's super moves, which are just as over the top as the first game's super moves, which was something I loved about the first game. Another thing I love is that they carried over the pre-battle dialogue from MKX for this game, which was something I really liked in MKX, and I think there's a lot they could do with this. They even had a reference to the comics of one of Atrocitus's and Supergirl's conversations, not Gorilla Grodd. Now, there is one other thing about Injustice 2 going around, which is that 2 other new characters have more than likely been confirmed for the game. Captain Cold, a Flash villain, because his gun appears in the trailers in the wireframe part at the beginning, and Dr. Fate, based on a leaked image of an Injustice 2 t-shirt. And on the subject of that, I always had planned that if there ever was an Injustice 2 announced, that I would make a countdown of the top 5 characters I would like to see, so expect that in the next few days. And also on the subject of fighting games, we also had news on Tekken 7. Oh, how I've been waiting so freaking long for some sort of news on Tekken 7 outside of Japan. Well, for one, we got an awesome trailer with Heihachi fighting against Akuma, which in turn shows that Akuma is going to be playable in the Western version of the game, just in case Capcom pulled some shit and made him only playable in the Japanese version. Next is that we finally have some sort of release date for the game, being early 2017, meaning that I don't have to wait that much longer to play this game, but the biggest thing that came out from Namco Bandai was that Tekken 7 is actually going to have a story mode. The first time there's been a story mode in Tekken. I've seen the Japanese trailers for Tekken 7, and they all focus heavily on the plot of the game, so having a story mode benefits the game greatly in my opinion, as it will be more fleshed out. Also, Harada-san said that in the story mode, the game will transition seamlessly between cutscenes and actual fights, which, if the transition in the trailer is anything to go off of, will be amazing, as I thought that transition was brilliant. There was no, change or anything, it just suddenly gameplay. I guess the only other major game shown at E3 which relates to me is Watch Dogs 2. If you've seen my top 10 games I like but everybody hates, then you'll know that I actually like Watch Dogs, and was really interested in seeing the sequel when it was confirmed to exist. Now, while I didn't notice everything in the trailer, I'm not Game Explain, I found that the game is still sticking to a lot of the first game's mechanics, but is obviously building upon that which I think is good. Based on an advertisement sort of the game, it even appears that you'll be able to hack things like drones, which should be interesting. I remember coming across an interview with Ubisoft saying that Watch Dogs 2 would take more risks than the first game, which I think is good, since the problem I did have with the first game was that it stuck mostly to basic mechanics for an open world sandbox game like GTA. I'm also really curious to see how the plot plays out with this new criminal group of what appears to be emo teenagers in San Francisco. Let's just hope that the graphics that we see in the trailer are the graphics we will have in the final game. I'm pretty sure Ubisoft learned their lesson. For the last non-Nintendo game that relates to me, which I didn't even know was at E3 until after it was over, which is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. I wanted to talk about this game for some time. This is an upcoming indie game funded on Kickstarter and is a spiritual successor to the Metroidvania-style Castlevania games. I've never played a Castlevania game, but when I heard about this game, I found it very interesting, partially because it was a Metroid-style game, and it doesn't appear that we'll be getting a Metroid game with Samus anytime soon. Based on the gameplay I've seen posted by Game Explain, it looks really promising, as it notably has a lot of similarities to Symphony of the Night, like leveling up, and it interests me in a way that a lot of indie games typically don't for some reason, as I mentioned in my Shovel Knight LP. Also, David Hayter is in this game. Let's just hope that the game will actually be good when it comes out, unlike a certain other indie game that recently came out. Getting back to Nintendo, we have more of their smaller games that they showed off. First, we have Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE. I still hate that title, but more importantly, I think that I may have predicted the future. Back in my unpopular video game opinions video, when I talked about how I was looking forward to this game, I said that one of my worries was censorship, since at the time one scene in the game had been censored. Now that worry has been confirmed. So many things in this game have been censored by Nintendo of America, and they're all really dumb. Now, I'm fine with censorship if the reason for it is because the Japanese version may have something that is deemed inappropriate or offensive everywhere else, or because of cultural differences. However, this game's censorship is neither of those, and none of the things being censored would have raised the game's rating. I think the dumbest of all the censorship in this game so far has to be this scene, in which the main female character, Tsubasa, wears a bikini to distract a perverted Mirage-possessing photographer. I've seen tons of bikinis in my life, even as a kid, as I see them pretty much every time I go to the beach, and female characters in TV shows I watched when I was a kid wearing bikinis. But despite the game being T-rated, Nintendo censored it with this horrible-looking outfit, which completely changes the whole goddamn meaning of the scene. Before, I was wanting to get this game because I thought the gameplay looked fun, but now I'm stuck on the fence, as I also don't want to buy the game because I don't want to support Nintendo making these dumb censors. My only hope is that the European version uncensors this, as a lot of things in Fire Emblem, such as Farge's swimsuit scene in Awakening, are uncensored in the European version. On the same topic of RPGs, Nintendo also announced a new RPG IP for the 3DS made by Grezzo called Ever Oasis. Personally, from what I've seen, it's not really my type of RPG, but it doesn't mean it's bad. The game looks good for the 3DS, and the whole oasis and desert theme is pretty unique for an RPG, as most RPGs only have deserts as one area. I think the reason why some people were pissed when this was announced was because they thought it was going to be mother-free, which I find dumb, since Nintendo did say it was going to be a new IP. The Mother/Earthbound series is not a new IP, it's an already existing franchise, and this is coming from someone who does want Mother-free to get released internationally. Continuing with RPGs, Nintendo also showed off Paper Mario Color Splash. Fuck this game. I'm not going to say any more since I'm saving it for its own freaking video, but this just added more fuel to the fire. Continuing with actual RPGs, we have Yokai Watch 2, which is 2 versions just like Pokemon. Oh, no, Yokai Watch doesn't relate to me, but I want to clear up something because this game has been haunting me for a year now, and there's no better time to talk about this. Last year when I made my video about Nintendo's digital event with the troll song in the background, as that's what I felt the whole event was like, and in that video, I included games that I didn't care for and games that people hated like Federation Force. One of the games I included was Yokai Watch, as I had never heard of this game prior to the event, and I was so confused by it. But after I uploaded the video, I looked at the comments on the trailer, and so many people were happy that this game was being released in English, which made me instantly regret having it on the list in the first place. I was like, oh shit. As a result, every time this game is mentioned, I think back to that moment. As for the sequel itself, I personally don't care for like the first game, as the gameplay doesn't interest me, but it seems perfectly fine. The only thing I find weird is that the first game hasn't been out for a year, if I believe, and there's already a freaking sequel. Now for the last game I'll talk about in this video, as I find it to be the last game that relates to me, which is Mario Party Star Rush. I like the concept of collecting Mario characters to follow you on a path, but I don't think it works for Mario Party at all. I think this would work more for a new type of Mario spin-off, like a Mario Dungeon Crawlers or something. Plus, it isn't even a Mario Party, as you play as Toads who collect the actual Mario characters. One comment I saw that sums up this game perfectly is that the game should be called Toad Party featuring Mario and Friends. Why can't Nintendo bring back the classic Mario Party formula, as that's what everybody wants? So that's it for all my impressions of the games that relate to me at E3. Overall, I think that this E3 has been one of the most enjoyable for me, and I really look forward to getting my hands on all games that got me excited this year. The only other thing I wanted to talk about is, why did Nintendo not have a press conference or digital event this year? With all the announcements and trailers for them, they could have easily fitted that into an event. Also, why was the NX not showing? When does Nintendo think a good time to show off the NX is? E3 is the perfect time. If it's showing in a Nintendo Direct, it's just going to be very random. Also, I just want something about the NX revealed, because all these rumors going around about it just tired me out.